In September, four upper caste Thakur men raped a 19-year-old Dalit girl in Hathras, India. 2 weeks later, she died in a hospital. Her body was cremated by the police in the middle of the night with no family members present. Following this, many discrepancies like delay in filing the FIR or alleging that she was never raped and this is a conspiracy took the nation by storm. Protests erupted, family of the victim was intimidated, and the authorities have been largely silent at the caste angle of the incident. They say violence against women in India is common, and hence this is just another rape case. Dalit activists, however, say this was a caste rape. I have with me today the phenomenal Kiruba Munusamy, a Dalit human rights lawyer and an advocate at the Supreme Court of India. She works against caste-based atrocities and violence against women. Kiruba, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
Now we understand already that the media in India is mainly run by upper caste, upper class men and women. And I have seen many primetime shows where journalists have largely dismissed that Hathras case had anything to do with caste. Why is it that a country where we exercise caste in our own households on a daily basis suddenly finds it divisive when the Dalit community outrages against caste violence?
I think most of the upper caste groups believe that caste is in reservation and caste is practiced only through violence. And when it comes to gender-based violence, especially violence against Dalit women, they think it is another form of gender-based violence and it is not targeted because of caste, because they don't know the lifestyle or the living environment Dalit women are in. So this invisibility of Dalit women has been forever in the Indian society, especially in the Indian feminist movement. And that is the very reason why Dalit women have to speak for their own rights. And we have been calling out the patriarchy that's coming from Brahmanism and the Indian caste system. But most of the, our female counterparts in the feminist movements, they do have a certain privilege from their caste position. So they think caste is beneficial for us. So why should we oppose it? I think it comes from that point. And whenever a media person speaks to us, they want us to tell pathetic stories. They want us to tell specific incidents of caste discrimination we faced. And when they ask us to write about caste experiences, they are asking us to write from personal experiences. So this itself clearly shows how every Dalit person in the country is experiencing caste on a day-to-day basis and on a personal basis as well. But when it comes to an offense where Dalits are brutalized and the offense has been committed by the upper caste Thakurs or whomsoever for that matter, just to reinforce their caste supremacy, then they deliberately deny the primary role of caste in that. So I think it's a hypocrisy, which is, which I'm not surprised of. And even Dr. Ambedkar had referred to upper caste groups about being such, big hypocrites. And, I honestly think unless this Indian society is going to recognize the role of caste in women oppression and denying the right to equality or the very right to life of Dalit community, the Indian feminist movement is not going to dismantle any form of, any structure, especially patriarchal structure that's inflicting caste-based violence against them. So it is on their part. And I would like to tell the upper caste women that if a Dalit woman can be disposed of this easily when the entire nation's eyes were on the case, what would they do to their own family women? They could easily dispose of, and their men would totally support their fellow men, and they don't have a voice at all. At least we have a community. We outrage on the basis of caste, but upper caste women are even more vulnerable than us, but they are not recognizing it.
So feminism is not intersectional if we don't understand the oppression on a larger basis. Kiruba, you had tweeted, and I quote, "Those who are surprised by the way Hathras case is handled, note that in my 11 years of experience as a lawyer, I have protested in police stations to register atrocity cases, met DSPs, filed petitions in High Court to invoke SC/SC Act, and every single case is dealt like this. So it is not at all surprising for you Hathras panned out in terms of police protection being meted out to upper caste panchayats, whereas, for example, Chandrasekhar Azad from Bhim Army was detained by the police for protesting in favor of the victim's family. Is that normal?
Yeah, and we are not surprised of the violence even. So when the
Mm,
Hathras case happened, people were surprised how such a violence could happen to a woman, especially from a rural area, and how she could be strangulated, and how such violence can happen. But this violence is something which is part of our lives,
mm,
and we have been experiencing this every now and then.
mm,
And I think I'm seeing so many cases, many such cases throughout my childhood. So
mm,
it was not a surprise to me. And as a lawyer, I have been to many police stations where I have to struggle, to fight to even register a case, let alone invoking a CST Act. And when Riya Singh was on a panel, she even spoke about how this was not surprising to her as well. So for Dalit women, for Dalit community, such violences have been regular, and we are not surprised about it. And the fact that the system always works for the benefit of upper caste has been exposed by Hathras case. Otherwise, I don't think this is new. So basically, we have a systemic problem where the perpetrators of upper caste groups, they get impunity from both the police, the state, and the court. So it's not just the state and the police that failed Dalit women or Dalit community, but also the legal system that failed, that totally failed all of us. So when a complaint reaches the court, reaches the police station, they don't register it straight away. Either they ask us to compromise, or they say that there has been no offense committed, like they say in the Hathras case. And then we have to protest in front of the police station, or we have to go to meet the commissioner or assistant commissioners, or whomever, superintendent of police, whomever is in the top position, or we have to file a petition in the high court asking for a direction to direct the police officials to register a case. And after the registration, they don't invoke a CST Act. The law clearly states when an offense has been committed against the member of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, it has to be presumed as a caste motivated offense and not as an IPC offense, because there are chances that the structures might have enabled upper caste person to easily attack a person of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So they don't follow this. And again, we have to file a petition in the high court direction, asking for a direction to include this special provision. And then after registration of the case, most of the time they don't arrest the perpetrators. And in one rape case where a Dalit engineering student, female student, was raped, the upper caste student was not arrested for 3 months. He filed a bail petition in the trial court. It was dismissed. Then when the case by bail petition was second bail petition was filed in the high court, fortunately we came to know about it, so I intervened. The bail was cancelled, and again he files another petition in the high court asking to reconsider the bail petition that he filed in the trial court. The high court grants an order to the trial court to reconsider the bail application, and the trial court misinterprets this order, and it thinks high court is asking me to reconsider his bail application, which was dismissed, and grants bail. He flows away. He flies out of the country. He marries some upper caste woman from his own caste, and we are fighting the case in India. So when there is a crime happens, and when there is a complaint against a person, he is not allowed to fly out of the country, right? But in this case, he flew. So this is the plight. So from registration to arrest and to file charge sheet. In other cases, we have 90 days of time to file charge sheet. But in order to fast track atrocity cases, the fast tracking mandates 60 days of charge sheet filing. And there are also other technicalities. For instance, in the ACST atrocities case, it is basic sense for any police officials to get the caste certificate of the victim and file it in the FIR. But most of the time they don't do. So these all result in procedural lapses, and most of the atrocity cases get dismisses on the basis of this technicality grounds. And also when it comes to trial, most of the special public prosecutors are from upper caste, as same as that of the perpetrators. The judges also from the upper caste. So the victim and the witnesses, they are not trusted at any point of time in the trial. And most of the time they are humiliated like the Hathras family are. And they are not in a position to fight for their justice. So there is a provision in the SCST Act which allows the victim's family and the victims to appoint their own public prosecutors. But again, it mandates 7 years of experience on the bar, and we don't have trained lawyers in the community in the rural areas to practice in the trial court. See, I am the only Dalit woman lawyer who is practicing in the Supreme Court by openly identifying my caste. There are, of course, other Dalit women lawyers and other Dalit lawyers, but most of them, they don't even identify their caste because of this stigmatization and because of fear of ostracization. And I'm not going to blame them, but this is the reality. So I think the government and the Bar Council of India, or like the police officials, should have a list of social workers. When there is an offense regarding to women, they should have a list of lawyers who can be approached when there is an atrocity case. We don't have such practice in the police stations or in the trial courts. So I think the basic uh, right to best legal services is not available to Dalits.
Kiruba, we saw the Black Lives Matter movement become one of the largest civil rights movements we've seen lately. And there has been a conversation raised on digital platforms that while the Western diaspora or even industries like Bollywood, they took part in the Black Lives Matter movement, but they are silent on the Dalit Lives Matter movement. So, what are your thoughts on this intersection between race, gender, caste, and the West?
So I think it's very clear that the Brahmins who are dominating in India, when they migrate to other parts of the world, they claim to be the oppressed minority communities, and they call themselves brown. And that is the reason why that they are identifying themselves with the Black Lives Matter, and they are, in a way, supporting Black Lives Matter. I think this is again an exploitation by the Brahmin community. Just because you have moved to a different country, and just because that you are brown and you're lesser, you're darker than the white person, it doesn't mean that you're not an oppressor, right? But they are hypocrites. That's what I'm telling you. Upper caste people are hypocrites. Now, Dr. Ambedkar, in his paper Castes in India, which he wrote for Columbia University, he clearly mentioned if Hindus migrate to other parts of the world, they'll take caste with them. Caste will become a world problem. And now we see how caste has become an international problem. We have Cisco in the US, and we have so many discrimination cases in the UK, and there are many other discrimination cases which are not visible in the Europe because of Indians and Sri Lankans who are from the caste basis migrated to different parts of the world. So they practice the caste hegemony here in the Western modern world that they have migrated to. So they practice caste, they discriminate, they continue to be oppressors. And in the Cisco case, it is very clear how Brahmins were able to leverage in a multinational corporation company for their benefit. Yeah. So I think they are all trying to exploit all the resources whichever is available for the minority oppressed groups in the foreign country. At the same time, by being a dominating caste in India, they are enjoying the same privileges as oppressor caste. And then when it comes to race, caste, and gender, I think most of the time when we talk about race and caste, we try to equated, but Dr. Ambedkar had clearly told that caste is something which is different and race is something which is different. And even in my opinion, I would say that we could definitely relate our pain and our movement with African American movement or Black movement. But when the African American framework cannot be simply straight away applied to another African community, I don't think the African American framework could be possible and applicable to the Indian Dalit movement. But many of the scholars who are living in the USA, they are inspired by the way the Black movements are working and how the African American frameworks are helping them in identifying the racial discrimination and bringing more inclusive and diverse policy in recruitment and in many other platforms. And I think that inspiration is urging them to adopt that framework and apply it to the Indian Dalit movement. But I appreciate the young scholars in the US who are trying to adapt such progressive frameworks and to put it for the benefit of Dalit movement. But I think we have to be very vigilant when we try to adopt a foreign framework and we apply to it to the Indian movement.
Absolutely. I think this Western hypocrisy was very visible in a mainstream media platform, like when the Indian matchmaking was released. And I could see all the diaspora really celebrating that, oh, we are in the mainstream media now, there's brown representation. And there was no mention of caste in that whole, in that whole series, whereas caste is one of the biggest factors of this matchmaking system that we have.
If you look at the Netflix series or any other Hollywood movies where Indians represent, they all are Sharmas, Patels,
Yeah.
and the surnames would clearly show who has the privilege to enter into Hollywood, even on the small characters, or who has the privilege to be represented as Indians. And most of the times, Indians eat only vegetarian food. And whose culture is that? Yeah, it is theirs. And also, I think they have done enough damage to the Indian community in the foreign countries. In the UK, the Dalit diaspora here, they tried to bring caste into the equality law, and they struggled much to point out to the British government of how discriminatory caste is and how it's been subtly operating in the British world. But the Brahmins and the upper caste groups were so influential to even lobby with the government, and they did make the government drop caste from being taking place in the equality law. And if you take the California textbook case, the California textbooks clearly mentioned of how caste operates and how the Indo-Aryan migration and how the upper caste groups were dominating. And then the Hindu groups, they filed cases, they brought new bill, and now this California has become a precedent in the US to interfere into any history that's been read rightly by the students. So when there is a history rightly printed in the textbooks, now the Hindu groups have a precedent to interfere, influence the government, and bring a new bill. So they are so influential, and I'm telling you now, unless these groups are being, taught what equality is, we are not going to see equality anywhere in the world. And it is not us Dalits who has to be educated. Yeah. It is upper caste groups. So when this Dear White People Netflix series was there, I was thinking, what? You're calling them Dear White People? But they would never have this basic courtesy to consider as human beings, equal human beings, but still they have a series to talk about racial discrimination, and they call Dear White People.
Kiruba, you've given so many interviews lately, and you've spoken to so many people, and I think you've mentioned, your discomfort also when questions are being posed to you by upper caste journalists. Do you see the media shift gaze now? Do you see the questions asked to you acknowledge the caste angle now, or is it still the same dismissal?
No, I don't think any media house acknowledges caste, because if they had acknowledged, the first question would have been, now such a caste violence has happened and what is the way forward? But everybody wanted me to prove how this case is a caste-based violence. And by the fact that the Indian society is denying the caste angle in any violence, clearly shows how they are not interested in taking this conversation forward. So if you want to have an active, honest conversation, you need to acknowledge that there is caste, and everybody knows that caste exists. It doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that they are not aware of. They are all aware of, but still they wanted to make us prove, all the time that this is something caste-based, and we put a lot of labor and time in just proving what has been already proven. When a Dalit woman is speaking, they always expect her to speak as a Dalit woman and not as a woman. And when I speak as a Dalit woman lawyer, then they wanted me to talk only on the issue of law and caste and not on any other issue on generally about caste of women. And just day before yesterday, a professor who's in India now, and he has done his PhD from Edinburgh University, and he's a Commonwealth scholar, and he has posted on his Twitter that NDTV journalist has asked him to write about Hathras from his personal experiences. And he was outraged. And he is a
Mm.
PhD in sociology from Edinburgh. But
Yeah.
this person not only asks him to write about caste, but she's also telling him to how to write about caste and what to write about caste. So yeah, and he was outraged. And I see these things happen across, the media houses, and nobody realized. And he was not even apologized by NDTV or his journalist. So they think they know what we should write and how we should write. And whenever the media houses ask me to write about anything, even before Hathras, they think what I write from my experiences is irrelevant, and
Mm.
it is something which is not worth publishing. So this
Mm.
decision to decide which is worth and which is not worth,
Yeah.
and which is important and which is not important, is actually blocking many more narratives on caste coming out. And that is how the homogeneous understanding and perception of caste is still existing. If the media houses had allowed many Dalit women like me or any other Dalits in the nation for that matter to write from their own perspective, their own understanding, we would have had a very different narration and heterogeneous, multiple narrations about caste, and it would have led to a very active conversation on caste, and we would have been able to engage more youngsters in addressing the issue of caste. And there is no need for us to even ask a person on a national media to prove how this is a case related to caste. And there was a screening in Tamil Nadu where the screening is about trans women and queer rights. So after the screening, they asked about why such a rights are important and why this is thing, why that is that, why do you need a separate reservation, and will you use male toilet or female toilet? Such questions were coming out.
Mm.
And a very dear queer friend, he rightly pointed out, if you had had a queer person in your own classroom, you wouldn't have to bring somebody from outside to tell you how a queer person is different from you all and how his rights are unique and his experiences are unique. So I think this is applicable to every minority group, every oppressed community. If you want to know the unique and specific problems of Dalits, bring them in, make them live with you, allow them to express the way they want to, and then you will have your own understanding, and you don't want us, and there is no need for us to even prove that such a thing is there.
No, you're absolutely right. I think when Hathras, the news broke, the very first question was, why is it about caste? Why caste matters? And I think you tweeted as well that, can we, for fuck's sake, just move beyond this and acknowledge that this is the reality and then move the conversation forward rather than just, keep saying the same thing again and again.
Dilpreet, can you imagine? I was talking about this thing continuously for 3 days, and I was already personally grieving, and
Yeah.
I was already suffering from survivor guilt. One fellow Dalit sister is in a rural place and she has been brutalized. Now I'm in a safe position to raise my voice, for her justice, demanding her justice.
Yeah.
This is one thing. And
Mm.
the other thing is, every time when there is a violence, I feel really bad about that. Being a fact, I'm a lawyer and I'm not able to stop anything. And every time I try to bring perpetrators to justice, but all I do is just file petitions after petitions, even to just initiate the investigation. And I'm already fed up with the impunity, state impunity and the police impunity. And when all such thing is happening, I'm also personally grieving.
Mm.
This is a community loss. If you talk about mental health care, or for
Yeah.
that matter any personal care to the Dalit community, I think the violences and the trauma we experience has become part of our lives. Many Dalits, we don't even have the privilege to recognize such issues and specifically go to a therapist or mental health professional to even discuss such things,
Mm.
because we don't know this is something which could be healed by a therapy session or whatever it is.
Mm.
So for Dalits, it is all about community care. For
Mm.
Dalits, it's all about being a community and fighting as a community and working as a community. And it's always collective effort. So this one loss makes us, outrage as collectively. And I was also grieving I'm not a machine, and this is not just a news for me like other journalists. And they didn't even recognize the fact that I would grieve and that I would take it personally. And of course, this is personal. And every time I outrage, they call it Dalit anger. And they called it personal. Yeah, she is from your community, no? So it might be personal to you. Of course, when you are supporting BJP, which rallied in support of the rapist, and when you are supporting the Thakur men who are rallying in support of the rapist, is it not personal to you? The fact that you're not acknowledging the role of caste in Hathras case is not personal to you. It is very personal to them because they are enjoying, and they are privileged by the fact that by denying caste is not existing. So it is personal for every one of us, but they try to label my anger as Dalit anger, and they try to label my argument as personal, is coming from a personal space and not from a intellectual space. There are so many things that outrages me right now, but I'm doing it because I think now, not only me, but we all of us have a bounden duty to fight for justice when we are born as a member of this caste.
Lastly, Kiruba, what is the way forward? Because, people say we need a new law, but the Constitution of India itself prohibits caste discrimination, and yet we exercise caste daily. How do we, as a community, ensure protection and dignity to Dalit women?
Yeah, this is something I come across every time a heinous crime is committed.
Yeah.
So they think the laws are not enough, the laws are not stringent enough
Yeah.
to punish the victims. And when Nirbhaya case happened, we even amended our juvenile justice law, and
Mm,
for the first time in the entire world, we brought 16-year-old to be tried as an adult in the criminal court, and we introduced Nirbhaya funds. But I think people have to clearly come out of their small cocoons and see what is really happening, because we have law, we have Nirbhaya funds, we have amended the Juvenile Justice Act. Now we provide capital punishment to rapists. But why is there still an impunity? Where is this coming from?
mm,
And if they come out and look for the answers, it is very obvious and it is out there, because we are not implementing it enough. So I think the only way forward is to first acknowledge caste, and
mm,
second, make structural reforms by bringing in more minority representations into the police force and the state power. And thirdly, the state should have a political will to enforce the right to equality clause that's been guaranteed by the Indian constitution, and to annihilate caste. And if the state has this political will, it will not allow the caste panchayats to operate, or it will not protect the perpetrators. And most of the time when such a caste violence happens, section 144 is implemented only on the Dalit neighborhood and not on the upper caste neighborhood, who has already committed a crime and who could organize again to further commit further crimes.
mm,
So such things will naturally change. And fourthly, I think the legal system has to change itself. For
mm,
instance, in the Supreme Court for the past 10 years, we didn't have a Dalit judge, and only in the last year we had one.
mm,
We appointed one.
mm.
So when one Dalit male has to come to the Supreme Court after 10 years of the last Dalit judge retires, when are we going to have a Dalit woman CJI? When
Mm,
are we going to have a Dalit queer person as a judge?
mm,
When are we going to have a bench full of minorities, where a Muslim woman, Dalit woman, a queer person, and for that matter, any other minority, linguistic minority or religious minority taking place and deciding from the reality, of the country?
mm,
So I think an inclusive, diverse policy decisions in the recruitment of judges, the
mm.
recruitment in the police department, and power sharing in the governmental process is very need. And in short, structural reforms are the only way forward.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kiruba, for joining me and educating our viewers on the issue of caste at a time when you are continuously engaging with the issue, which is obviously distressing to revisit again and again. And yeah, as you said, caste should no longer be an open secret, and it's tiring to explain it again and again. But I appreciate you very much, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.